The realest thing you can do is have a drum beat with nothing but a drum beat. Joe Best can't rap. Pal Simeon can't rap. What is the deal with white male vegans coming on the tube pretending they can rap? Nobody else is pretending with you, man. You're pretending all by your lonesome. Look, man, this issue's been raised in a number of different ways last 2-3 years of my life. The idea that promoting beauty is promoting veganism. And, you know, it's a broken down concept in a bunch of different ways. First and foremost, I notice that these same people who want to defend lifestyle veganism, who want to defend the portrayal of vegans as beautiful and veganism as a way to become beautiful, whether that's as a diet, lifestyle, or what have you. At the same time, they're not letting go of the pretensions of being activists. They're not letting go of the save the world vocabulary. They're not letting go of the notion that what they're doing is radical, a challenge to authority, that is changing society, changing cultural values, etc. And you can't have it both ways. You really can't. I think it's cool if you just say, hey, this is a lifestyle. I'm showing off how I stay in shape, what I eat in a day, etc. It's cool, but it's not activism. And on the other hand, activism is not pretty, right? All the questions we get into, like check the videos on this channel talking about direct action everywhere, questioning whether or not those protests are effective and what would be the most effective mode of activism. Effective activism is not pretty. And by that, I don't mean a street riot. Not necessarily. I can't think of many situations where a street riot is the best mode of activism available to you. But it can mean sitting around at City Hall. It can mean paperwork and legal challenges. It can mean a whole lot of, principled, meaningful political action that'll never be on the cover of Vogue magazine. And of course, the fantasy that a lot of vegans are playing out on their websites and on their YouTube channels is exactly of wanting to take a photograph of themselves and pretend they're on the cover of Vogue magazine. I think also there's a kind of self-selected blindness and intentional ignorance about the reality of beauty itself. I don't know if these people have really had the experience of sitting and spending time with someone who is so ugly that you feel uncomfortable looking at them directly. Normally, when you know a particular person like that, whether it's due to disease that has scarred them in some way, that's made their face misshapen, or whether it's due to birth, they were just born ugly, or they were born with a disability or disfigurement that makes them ugly. That's part of life that you never see on TV. Even like comedy shows where the actors aren't selected for being beautiful, there is definitely a minimum standard of attractiveness, even for the funny fat guy on a TV show. Even for the ugly girl. I mean, it's like a running gag in Hollywood. The ugly girl is always a gorgeous actress, but they give her a pair of thick glasses and less appealing makeup. Less appealing hair and makeup. That's the ugly girl, real ugliness exists in this world. I remember meeting a guy in England who was just born with a horribly deformed nose in the middle of his face. And, he had to live with that for his whole life. And he was used to it. Like, the first time you looked at him, maybe if you knew him, maybe if you even just, like, if you were a coworker of his for a few weeks, you'd get used to it. But when you first look at him, you'd kind of flinch. And man, he was used to that. He was used to going to buy his groceries and having people respond really negatively. One of the reasons I remember that was at that time when I was in England, there was an ongoing debate, ultimately involving Parliament and the government, about whether or not the government should support plastic surgery. Like, the government should pay for plastic surgery in some cases. And what would be the line? Like, at what point do you actually have a deformity or disability that justifies the government paying for non-necessary surgery that will make you more attractive, or at least more normal looking? And obviously that guy, his whole life would have been different if he had been just kind of moderately unattractive instead of being frankly hideous in a way that people respond negatively. This is part of real life on Earth, man. And again, it's edited out of the highly artificial reality, currently shows you Thailand without showing that it's a military dictatorship, that shows people sitting in their bikinis in a restaurant eating dinner and pretends their legs aren't being bitten by mosquitoes. This highly sanitized, glamorized view of the permanent vacation. And they're literally editing out the ugly people. God knows, there are a lot of war cripples, a lot of people crippled by war in Thailand also, but in Laos and Cambodia next door. One of the events in my life that really changed my own thinking about beauty and ugliness and how we all live together in society was meeting a man on the Cambodian border. He was a border guard. He was in the military in some capacity. And he had a bullet wound in the middle of his face. The middle of his face was caved in with what I assume was a machine gun round, not a pistol round. And he had not had reconstructive surgery. He had just survived. He was what you look like when your face has been caved in by a bullet and your immune system just recovered. Like, period. No reconstructive surgery whatsoever. And he was, especially at first, he was hard to look at. It was hard to look him in the eye. I did it. And I talked to him in the Cambodian language. I was in quite a difficult situation on that border. There was no bus. There was no transport. There was no way for me to get from that border into Cambodia proper. And you couldn't just walk through the forest or anything. There's still mines. You could be blown up by mines. Anyway, sorry. One story leads to another. I don't think, in terms of the intellectual leaders, the influential leaders in veganism, I don't think anyone picked Gary Francione because he was good looking. I'm not a huge fan of Gary Francione. You can see my own videos. I have some criticisms of his work, but he's been a major voice. The woman who founded P.E.T.A. P.E.T.A. God, that's such a huge topic. But look, if you believe that promoting physical beauty is an effective method of promoting animal rights, well, P.E.T.A. took it to the logical extreme. They made softcore pornography for decades, featuring beautiful women, 90% naked or what have you. And they were claiming that was effective activism. Well, if it was, I can understand why you now want to imitate it. But I think the vast majority of vegans, not even feminist vegans, just mainstream middle-of-the-road vegans, they look back on the history of P.E.T.A. and they say, well, they did some things that worked, but, it's kind of regrettable. This whole experiment with naked women, it kind of gave P.E.T.A. a bad name. It gave animal rights a bad name. It doesn't make veganism look good, and it didn't have any outcomes. There was nothing positive to show for it in terms of outcome evaluation. And interestingly, that Gary Francione himself, he claims that was the reason why he quit P.E.T.A. That he quit that organization because of what he felt was the demeaning and counterproductive use of sexualized images of women. Interesting, because there were a lot of reasons to quit P.E.T.A. That's just one of them that I can think of. But look, the idea that if you get some vegans on the cover of Vogue magazine or appearing in highly beautiful, artificial, articulated poses as models, as supermodels, as beautiful, the idea that will convince or compel people to become vegan or to care about animal rights or care about ecology or what have you, that's deeply flawed simply by, the deep flaw in that thinking is revealed simply by looking at the other magazines on the shelf. Every store shelf, every supermarket is full of magazines that are depicting human beauty, especially the beauty of women, but plenty of them are showing beautiful men too. Men's health and fitness magazines, as well as fashion and pornography and everything else. What percentage of these images of beauty are vegan or vegetarian or ecological or ethical in any way? Obviously, an enormous number of people are influenced by, for example, the images of beauty in the X-Men movies. And I think superheroes are an important example because people tend to be influenced by superheroes when they're still children. There are young boys whose view of the world really is shaped by Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, action movies, comic book heroes like Batman, Superman, the X-Men, and the actors who portray them, as well as the images, the pictures, and the toys, and the type of physique, the way those depict men, the way those depict women. What do you think? Like, how would a couple of scrawny teenagers in bikinis compete with that? Or why would that have the kind of efficacy you're claiming for it? I think it wouldn't. I can understand up to a certain point. Like, I understand if the point is self-promotion, if the point is just enjoying the lifestyle, if the point is even to get a small business rolling. Like you want to run a resort, and you want to promote that resort. Sure, I completely understand that. I have never in my videos said that, lifestyle veganism is, totally counterproductive. But it is counterproductive even relative to the objectives that P.E.T.A used it when they were pursuing it. I don't think they've stopped. I just say, I'm just talking sort of past tense. Over decades of them trying to use that tactic with a huge budget, with advertising in mainstream newspapers, with all kinds of advantages that the average vegan on Instagram and YouTube, the average vegan trying to get something to the internet that they don't have. So this shows kind of the banality of beauty. But look, the other reality is these are all hollow promises. Being vegan does not make you more beautiful. It really doesn't. And I think this is also being edited out of our kind of digital vegan pseudo-reality here to some extent. If you go to a conference that's attended by serious animal rights activists, or even a conference where everyone's vegan, they're not better looking than people at other conferences. I've been to linguistics conferences, academic conferences, study of Asia, study of history, study of Buddhism. There was a philosophy conference the other week. They all have some good-looking people at them. Whatever. I mean, not everybody at the linguistics conference is ugly. Not everybody is fat. Whatever. Actually, most people in linguistics are pretty skinny. I don't know why. Maybe there's a psychological reason for that. Nobody's selling the linguistics Ph.D. diet. But yeah, a lot of scrawny guys in linguistics for some reason. It's just not true that if you go to an animal rights conference, everyone is gorgeous. It doesn't even look anything like going to a bodybuilding conference. And if you do go to a bodybuilding conference, 2 of the guys there are going to be vegan. But obviously the vast majority of those people are eating meat. The vast majority of images on the store shelf in fashion magazines are people who eat meat. The vast majority of images of athletes. Yes, there are a couple guys, a couple of women who are vegan, but the vast majority of these people have outward physical beauty and are eating meat. So there is no way you're going to convince the general public, and freely claims this, that the only way for you to be healthy and lean and beautiful is a vegan diet, or is a particular vegan diet, a high-carb vegan diet, or what have you. You are absolutely setting yourself up for failure because those are promises you can't deliver on. I'm going to give 2 more real-life examples just from here where I'm living in Canada. I live on the west coast of Canada. There are a lot of beautiful people here. Compared to the rest of Canada, just the climate is more mild. People care about their health and exercise. Generally, the level of physical health and vitality and beauty is high. And, ain't none of these people vegan. An incredibly small percentage of people here are vegan. If I walk through the cafeteria at my university, I'm a tall guy. I'm like 6'3". So I just look down as I'm walking through the cafeteria, which I often do. I mean, I walk through that cafeteria every couple of days. I can see who's eating hamburgers and who's eating veggie burgers. You can see the vast majority of people are eating meat. These are all good-looking people eating meat on a daily basis. There's absolutely no sense. You don't look around that room and see, wow, all these people are fat and ugly and unhealthy. And only the couple of good-looking people are the people eating salad or eating vegan meals. It's just not true. Living here in Victoria, I'm surrounded by outwardly gorgeous people who eat meat. If you live in Los Angeles or California or something, I'm sure that's true also. You have to admit to yourself, vegans have no advantage in terms of outward beauty. And we can get into a long list of reasons for why that is. Outward beauty, it's partly in the eye of the beholder, and it's partly based on some objective measurements of good health and completely arbitrary factors that are fixed for you basically from the day you're born. Part of it is the luck of the draw, the genetic lottery when you're born. There was a vegan event here at my university let's assume, and only young women attended. I don't think there was a single guy, a single male student attended this event. I did not attend. And people who were at the event posted it, posted photos of the event on Facebook that I saw. Now, I'm not hating on anyone, but the young women who attended that event, they're the same age as other university students. They're not better looking than the young women in the linguistics club or the history club or, a random selection of meat eaters on campus. They're just not. There is just no truth to the notion that when you meet vegans, you're going to meet people with glowing skin who are outstandingly beautiful or even who are slimmer than the other people around. Here, where I live, it's really not true. Now, some other parts of Canada, you might, chronic obesity might be much more of a problem than it is here on the West Coast. But still, there are plenty of fat vegans out there. Check out the homie Joe Best, for example, of a fat vegan and a guy who doesn't even have the redeeming qualities of being morally principled about his veganism. But that's another story. So look, if you're selling false goods, if you're making promises you can't back up, it's not going to be the basis for a political movement, a social movement, or even really a viable marketing campaign. As just one more example of this, outward beauty is not inner health. I have 0 dietary cholesterol. Okay, invisibly, I really am healthier than other guys my age who eat meat, who may be much better looking than me, who may be more athletic, or just have a more handsome face. For whatever reason, I was better looking back when I ate meat. That's the reality. I was slimmer, I was more muscular, and I was younger, and I was handsomer. If you do a before and after photo with me, I don't look better after getting vegan. But this business of making promises you can't really back up, for me also this fad of selling bicycles as a route to personal beauty, it also doesn't make sense. There are all kinds of good reasons to ride a bicycle. It's a mode of transport that works just great as long as it's not raining. Heavy rain alone makes riding a bicycle pretty much impossible, especially if you've got a job you're going to or something. But anyway, with that aside, I saw a video from a vegan guy up here, a series of videos that kind of moved me emotionally because he went on a long-distance bike trip through some of the same places I used to live and work in northern Laos. He went from northern Thailand through northern Laos and all of Vietnam, and it added up to thousands of kilometers. Thousands. And he was doing it as a vegan. And he was talking about it, and again, I was watching it kind of out of political interest, and it reminded me of this time in my life when I lived and worked there, and, I have an attachment to kind of the suffering of the people in that little area of Asia. I know a lot about their history, and anyway, there are different reasons why I was watching it. But then at one point during the video, he shows himself with his shirt off. And I'm not hating on the guy, but he doesn't look handsome. He doesn't look muscular. He looks pudgy and out of shape, despite the fact that he has just done an amazing series of climbs on a bicycle over an amazing distance through the mountains, eating just rice and fruit. And he commented in a joking way. He said, "Oh, well, as you can see, long-distance biking makes you look ripped." He was joking about it, but he's aware his physique does not look impressive, even after extreme endurance sport. So, it just seems to me like a self-defeating approach in so many ways. And what makes it irksome is that the people selling the beauty package, they're not just making the same claims that cynical fashion magazines and other, fad marketing agencies would make. They're making the further claims of save the world. They're claiming the outcomes of real activism when the actual activity is just self-indulgence and the fatuous celebration of a kind of beauty that's already celebrated in so many mainstream outlets in our society, whether it's under the heading of athletics, movies, acting, entertainment, or what have you. That's a really crowded shelf in the shop, and I don't think veganism is going to win by competing for 1 inch on that shelf.